I'm Katie Wells, host of the Maximized Minimalist podcast. I escaped the hamster wheel of modern-day motherhood, overwhelmed by clutter and buried under the mental load. Now I live in a home that feels calm, manageable, and made for real life. I have margin in my days, energy for who matters most, and time for slow mornings and silly dance parties in the kitchen with my family. With over 5 million listens, the show has helped women around the world turn their homes into their happy place. Around here, we simplify for more peace, more presence, and more joy. We choose grace over guilt and progress over perfection. And we believe your home should give back more than it takes. I'm here to help you do the same. Come along with me and my guests as we share the real stories, habits, and strategies that help you lighten the load from the inside out. Pull up a seat, friend, and let's do this together. Ready, set, simplify. Today's episode is for you. I am joined by Dr. Ashley Rath. She's a functional medicine practitioner, a Midwesterner, so we instantly have connection there, and someone who's made it her mission to help women and moms heal from burnout and build resilience. And not the grit your teeth and hustle harder kind, but the kind that helps you feel good again in your body and in your life. Ashley, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Maximized Minimalist, where we are all about real conversations that help us simplify our lives. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Katie, for having me. I'm so excited for today's conversation. Thanks for the invite.
So I always kick things off with this fun question, and that is, if you could magically declutter one thing from your life forever, no effort required, what would it be?
That's a good one. It's more of a chore than anything. It would be fine. Dishes. Yeah, It would be the dishes. Yeah. We run our dishwasher. Actually, I just saw your post about dishwasher. I was scrolling on your Instagram and you're like, we run the dishwasher every day. And I'm like, us too, except for sometimes 2-3 times a day, depending on if we're home or not. So yes, the dishes that are never ending with 3 tiny humans and a farmer husband. So yeah.
Lots of plates, lots of dishes. I think one of those never-ending chores would feel so good to just like poof, magically be gone. But in the meantime, we'll work on decluttering and systems to simplify what we can.
Yes, absolutely.
So diving into your expertise, so excited to talk about this, because when a woman feels exhausted, I'll speak for myself, I tend to be super short-tempered, or I just don't feel like myself. I've had definitely times in my life where I feel burnt out and I like almost don't recognize myself, like how I'm acting or just like my mindset. So how does someone know if we're actually burning out versus just having a hard week? What signs do you see most often in your line of work?
Yeah, great question. And I think burnout is super sneaky, like you said. Yeah. Like it can kind of creep up and then all of a sudden you're like, who am I? Like you kind of hit this realization of, wow, I am not what I used to be. And I think because it's this like slow burn, because we're so used to just grinding that we don't become aware of it right away. But what I see most frequently when people finally start to become aware of it and recognize it, it's kind of like you said, the number one thing I see across the board is fatigue. They're tired. No matter how much time you spend sleeping, if you get a good amount of sleep, you're waking up tired. You're looking forward to naps even after you wake up. But even after your nap, you're not awake and like truly vibrant. And I think that is really kind of like, oh, I feel tired all the time. But in addition to that, like the brain fog, one thing that I noticed with myself, in addition to the fatigue, especially when I was really early postpartum, when I say really early, like not like 2-3 weeks, but I'm talking like a year and a half after postpartum, where I'm like, I still don't feel myself. There was this like edge. And instead of having emotions that were more rolling plains and rolling hills, it was like peaks and valleys. And my patience was low. I had this like emotional edge that, very small things could kind of set me off. And I think that mental emotional regulation and resilience to stress being very, very low is kind of just that red flag of like, hey, I got to pause. I got to figure out like, what is actually going on? Am I running on E?
So I think it's interesting because when it comes to this topic, and a lot of listeners being moms, and I've experienced this too, there's definitely an aspect of like the specific season you're in. Postpartum, I feel different by nature than I do, 10 years later. My kids are 10 and 8 now. So it's almost like we have this physiological response from having children, getting lack of sleep. But what I'm hearing you say is even as you shift out of that season and maybe you're getting more adequate sleep and you're maybe doing other things that are hopefully supposed to give you energy, when we are in burnout, we're still not able to, it's not really making us feel much better. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. So we will have seasons of, like you said, like postpartum, you're not getting the sleep that, a typical person is getting in those phases. However, once you're out of the thick of that, or even during it, there's ways that we can support ourselves. And I think that awareness is super huge. Like, are you happy? Like, that was another thing. Like, have you lost your joy? Have you lost, there was one question. I remember a mom coming in. I'm like, what do you like to do for fun? And she could not answer that question. Like, she had lost this whole identity of herself, and she didn't know what fun and joy and was anymore for her, even if that was reading a book. Not that she had to go out with her friends and be all, super social, but what actually brought you joy that you have lost. And so there's this not just living to survive, but actually getting excited about the day. And I think that's part of burnout is that light just kind of continues to dim and dim. Mm-hmm. And we don't become aware of it. And finally we're like, I don't even know what makes me happy anymore. And that burnout is just, it's so deep. You're like, okay, we got to start somewhere. So what can I do? What can I do to start to turn the light back on?
It reminds me of that analogy, the frog in the boiling water analogy.
Yes.
Right? Uh-huh. It's slow, slow, slow. And the frog's like, no big deal. And then it's like, oh, too late. Right?
Yep.
And mm-hmm. I think too, to your point about even when our seasons are shifting, maybe we are not postpartum, but we're further past. I know I will say I kind of stayed stuck in survival mode because it had become my default for so many years after the identity, who am I after becoming a mom and where's my joy? And it was one day I had a huge reality check. I'm like, Katie, go to bed on time. You have the capacity to do this. Your kids are mostly sleeping through the night. But I was so stuck in you can't see. It's just like a fog. And it's hard to zoom out and go oh, I can integrate a little more joy in things I like to do. And I had to figure out how to do it in a new way. I like to read books. New moms, we go, I don't have time to read new books, but I was like, why don't I just read for 5 minutes before bed and re-energize myself in small ways, get that dopamine, that serotonin. And that really, for me, was a catalyst that made me realize yes, there's still things out of our control, right? We can't control our jobs, other things going on in our lives, but I felt that was really key. Now you're a functional medicine practitioner and you've worked in both traditional and functional medicine spaces. So from a body physiological perspective, how can we tap into our energy and our stress levels and learn some ways to help cope and build resilience from an inside out perspective?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And really, this is what I do every single day. So I love it and I get super passionate about it. And I'm like, yes, let's actually get to the root cause. And so if you don't mind, I'd love to get just a tad bit nerdy with you with this question, because I think understanding the science behind why we recommend such simple things like going to bed early is so huge. It's because, there's so much research and science behind it that support those basic, health habits, really. And so when we look at stress and we look at stress resiliency, and when we actually get to the burnout or even before burnout, just the exhausted fatigue state, maybe we're not full on burnout, but we've kind of lost our edge. We don't have as much energy. We feel like we're, maybe a little bit brain fogged. We feel like we need that cup of coffee. Otherwise we're not going to function. Or, maybe the glass of wine at night to be able to wind down, the opposite of that. And when we kind of get stuck in that stress wheel, what happens is physiologically our it's called the HPA axis. I don't know if you've talked about this on your podcast, but the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So when we're under stress, our adrenals pump out cortisol. It's like the stress hormones. It's not necessarily bad. This axis gets ignited when we go for, when we exercise or when we're growing. And so it's not necessarily bad, but if we constantly have these stressors going, that system is getting so taxed that your cortisol just doesn't stop running. It just keeps getting pumped out. And in short term, we see a spike in cortisol. So everyone, I feel like cortisol is kind of like this sexy topic on Instagram and on socials and stuff now, but people always think they have high cortisol. And in the short term, we do. But when we truly get to this burnout phase, what we're seeing with our lab results is this like flat line of cortisol. And we see it, I would say like 80% of the time when we're testing, it's not high cortisol, it's this like flat line of cortisol. And we've been on overdrive for so long that now our whole system is depleted and we wake up tired. We're tired all day. We cannot think clearly. We have this like fog, like you said, just like hovering over us, and we're not vital. Like we don't want to work out because we don't have the energy to work out, and that just burns us out even more. We're not making as good of health choices because again, like we just don't have the mental capacity to even think about meal planning or planning in general. And then we have all the just day-to-day tasks like dishes and laundry and our kids' schedules and running. And what happens that when that cortisol just gets absolutely flatlined like that, it starts to affect all these other avenues, including our digestion, including our immune system, including our transition into perimenopause. And now we're getting all the perimenopause or menopause symptoms at like this astronomical rate. Like we're seeing more and more people entering this beautiful perimenopause phase with even a whole host more than their already symptoms. And so when we don't get that cortisol under control, it really starts wreaking havoc. And now our metabolic function doesn't work properly. And we're seeing insulin resistance. We're seeing weight gain, unexplained weight gain, even if you're working out and eating fairly healthy. We're seeing just this like laundry list of symptoms when that cortisol flatlines. And so when we start to get to the root cause, instead of giving out, another, I would say sexy thing right now is hormone replacement therapy. And there's a time and a place for that. But instead of giving out estrogen or progesterone or testosterone or treating with a medication from a traditional side, we actually look at how can we reset that cortisol to get to the actual root cause. And when that cortisol is reset and your gut starts functioning properly and your insulin works the way it should work, and you'll see that fog lift and the light come back. And the number one thing we see with people is I have more energy. And it's because now the root, our nervous system controls and coordinates all other functions of the body. So if we're not running in that stress response 100% of the time, and we can actually heal and grow and restore like our bodies were meant to, it's really freaking cool to see. And to see that light shine back in that's already there. It's just been cluttered and muddled up with all the stress. So that was long explanation.
No, I love that. It makes so much sense. And it's healing from the inside out. And actually, I will tell you, so my husband works with Dr. Ashley, and we ran labs on me 6 months ago. And I was exactly what you said. I was at 80%. It wasn't like my cortisol was high. It was from all the years previously from burnout. My body, I had no cortisol, flatline, none at all. And I also had digestive issues. So for my digestive issues, I was like, I'll add a probiotic. That's good for you, right? I'll try going gluten-free. I'll cut out my coffee. And again, all those things can help short term, but I was the long-term benefit from just wasn't happening. And my energy was low, even though I was getting adequate sleep. And I was I felt like just what's wrong? So it was so incredible to be able to have clarity from one simple lab test. And also, like you said, to get to the root of the issue. And yeah, I think it's so profound. And I will say in myself, I would say it took about a month for me to start feeling so much better. And in the grand scheme of things, all the money and time I invested in trying all these other things for years that didn't work. I was like, a month, that's it. I started and 2 months in and 3 months in, and that only accelerated. So of course, Andrew, my husband's like, wow, Katie's much happier now. And So he's excited too, and my kids. So I think it's a really beautiful thing to be able to do that. And with functional medicine, sometimes that can be vitamins, sometimes it can be certain nutrition plans, short-term or long-term. And it's typically these really simple shifts, which I think all of us tend to overestimate, that can really, and they all have this compounding effect, right?
Yeah, I think that's huge for you to mention that, like, your energy. I just want to hit on the woman's energy within the household and how that plays such a role. And I think that leads us into this conversation of like burnout and how the energy of mom affects everyone else within the household, because we put everybody else in front of us, right? There's this mom guilt of like giving, 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 giving. And I think that's part of the reason of this burnout that we're seeing is not the investment in yourself. And when we realize that when we actually invest in ourselves and do the thing that deep down our bodies have been telling us to do for so long, we're going to see a better relationship with our spouse. We're going to see a better relationship with our kids, because there's something true to like, a mom ain't happy, no one's happy in the household, right?
Yes.
But it's so true because women carry that energy. We do of the household. And when we're anxious, we're going to give out that anxious energy. When we're tired, we're going to give out the, oh, I don't want to do anything mentality either for the rest of the household. But when mom is lit up and in high vibe and patient and kind and fun and a higher libido, I mean, come on, like daddy's going to be happier too.
Yes, I totally agree. All around. Yes.
So I just wanted to touch on that.
I think that's an important, and it's another really huge side effect that, again, we're like, okay, I got to do this. I got to do something for myself. And again, the easy route, and we certainly all taken it, and no guilt, no shame here, is like, oh, I don't have time. I'm too busy to make an appointment. I'm too busy to take this vitamin or do this thing or change my diet a little bit. But again, it's these small tweaks that really, I mean, you're great at teaching these in your clinic and, also throughout your book, which we'll talk about, that I think can really help every single person break out of burnout from the inside out. And again, this is short term. And also this is, all these changes or tweaks are super sustainable, everything you teach.
Yeah. And I think people think, I don't have time to just add another thing. Like, I don't add another thing. But when you truly get to the root and you heal yourselves from within, and you stop chasing like all these little external things and symptoms, because those go away, you have so much more time and space in your world to be able to do the things that you love. And I think that's huge when, especially, your podcasts of simplifying, right? And minimalizing. And when we truly do what serves us and what is actually our purpose, and when we're healthy doing it, all those other things get easier. We can minimize the other things because we're actually just getting to the root and healing that.
And I'll take a second to tie this into our consumption patterns, because right, I remember being burnt out and like, I just need to scroll Instagram, or back then I was like Pinterest. I'm dating myself, but it's like Facebook, right? And I was like, okay, well, I don't feel good. And Facebook, the algorithm knows this. So it serves me up an ad with a woman with a six pack who has some quote about like, I feel great, best I've felt my whole life. And I'm like, oh, okay, another supplement. And again, like you said, supplements, like these things have their place. But what I appreciate about functional medicine and getting to the root of it is it's just like, doesn't mean you need to be on it for your whole life. It's custom to you and your labs. And so from a consumption pattern though, I was accumulating all these wellness type products that were, again, there may be benefit, probably was, but they weren't doing anything to move the needle. Yet I was stuck in that consumption pattern thinking, well, it's helping me. Or let's be honest, they'd sit and collect dust in my cupboard for months and months, or I'd quit taking them. So again, another kind of unexpected side effect from healing is like, you don't have to constantly be scrolling for solutions and kind of filling that gap and that void. I want to ask you, so you have women that come into your clinic, you do things virtually. So what would you say is like one big thing that changes the game for women who are listening and are like, this is me, like changes the game, tip them out of this burnout and to build resilience? Is it something physiologically? Is it mindset? Is it an element or something you recommend they integrate into their schedule? Is it all of these things? Where does one start?
It's a great question. it depends, right? Like where the woman is. But I think the number one thing, like when I look at the women coming into my office and I look at why they're here, unfortunately, most women make the decision when the pain gets too bad and they're sick of dealing with the pain, right? Because we're motivated by pain more than pleasure. Versus our goals. But it doesn't have to be that way. So if you're like, oh, I don't feel very good, but I want to make changes, but I'm not that bad yet, right? Like, I think that's a really mucky water to be in. And eventually, God will be like, hey, pay attention, right? You'll get a bigger problem. And so we don't want to get to that stage. But I think the biggest change that happens with everyone, regardless of where they are in their health journey, is they have to start identifying with who they want to become. Let me give you an example. So when you are on your health journey and people ask me like, well, I know what to do, I just don't do it. Or why is that? Like, why is it that I can read all the books, I can listen to all the podcasts, I can, do all the courses, but I still just don't do what I think I should do? And I think the biggest shift comes when we can start to identify with that identity. So a runner identifies as a runner, right? A business owner puts a stake in the ground and says, I'm going to start a business. I'm a business owner. A healthy person isn't going to look in the mirror and I'm going to share a story with you. So Rachel Hollis used to do this at our conferences. She used to have this sheet of paper with a whole bunch of questions. And the questions were very, very vulnerable questions. They were like, I've lost a child. I have gotten a divorce. And it was more of this like icebreaker. But one of the questions was, I hate my body. It wasn't, I dislike my body. It wasn't, I don't like my nose or my midsection. It was, I hate my body. And I found it extremely powerful to see more than 50% of the room stand up. And they would write this piece of paper and then they would pass it around. So when you stood up, when she asked this question, you didn't know who was actually standing up. It was kind of anonymous in that. But this question was really insightful for me to realize that over 50% of these women, with thousands of women in this room, stood up to that question. And it made me realize like a healthy person doesn't say that in their head. They have to start changing the way they look at themselves and how they identify themselves. There's a stake in the ground and be like, okay, I'm not healthy right now, but the identity can be like, I'm getting healthier every single day, right? So there's this mindset of, who am I now? But who do I want to be? Like, who am I becoming? That you can start to shift that. And when you do that, you can start to have the mindset of health and vitality and well-being. And I strength train, I work out. Like, it starts to become who you are. And when it becomes who you are, you start to integrate the habits. Like, I'm a great sleeper. Maybe you didn't start there, but like, what were the habits that started you? I'm becoming a healthier sleeper. I'm becoming a better sleeper. So I think that shift of identity is huge when it comes to start to implementing healthy habits.
I 100% agree. I'm actually geeking out that you said that, because it's a conversation we have regularly in my communities. Like, we are simplifiers, right? And it doesn't mean we're perfect. It means that we are becoming simplifiers. And it's like, it's becoming the identity of the person and how identity drives behavior. And that is like the number one way to start. And again, going to what we talked about in the beginning, it's not how do I hustle and grit my way through this? Because when you're like, what would a runner do today? Versus someone who maybe wants to train for a 5K if I feel like it. Well, a runner would put on their shoes and put on a rain jacket and probably run in a light sprinkle. Whereas someone who's just like, maybe I'll try it, and see how it goes, is a huge difference. Those people don't typically cross the finish line, right? So I do think there's something, and we've all been there, whether it's our health, whether it's something as simple as a goal or wanting to sleep better. I'm going to be a great sleeper. What would a great sleeper do? And all of a sudden those choices become abundantly clear and we're more likely to follow through. And I agree with that on so many levels. And actually, I teared up when you said, that little survey everyone filled out, because I think a lot of us have experienced, like, had those thoughts us. And when we're so consumed by all the things we don't like about our bodies, it's hard to zoom out and go, wait. I am someone who loves my body. Even saying that, I don't really believe it. Like, I love my body, but I think there is I am someone who loves my body. I think, again, it's a little bit of like, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, like fake it till you make it. But what would okay, maybe I'm getting dressed and I put on a pair of jeans and I'm like, oh, wow, there's an extra 5 pounds that wasn't there 2 months ago. I could say, well, someone who loves their body would go, okay, well, maybe that extra weight is there. What can we do to change that? And also be content or find beauty in the body that I have. And it helps us take this, I think, different path with how we talk to ourselves, that inner voice, which, let's be honest, it's running 24/7, that inner voice, whether we agree with it or not. But we have the choice to either believe it and let it stunt our growth and stunt us from taking one small step forward, or being like, yeah, you're right, inner voice. Like, it's okay. Here's what we're going to do instead. So I 100% agree that that is a really great starting point for so many of us women.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think sometimes the like fake it till you make it, I laugh about it, but I've done it so many times. And one of the tricks and tools that I've used when you feel like you're like kind of at the bottom of the barrel, like I have no idea how I can switch this mindset, because your reality is your reality, right? However, when you think about the potential, or you think about like being hopeful, that reality, you can start to shift on that identity. And so one of the tools I tell my patients and the people I coach with, et cetera, is to get more broad with those thoughts. So we have over 70,000 thoughts in a day. You're right. They're constantly coming. There's so many thoughts in a day. And sometimes we get so honed in on it, like, especially people that like have struggled with a lot of maybe fear or anxiety or guilt or shame, we kind of hone in, we have our blinders on only on this one thing that we're stressed about or anxious about or fearful. But the more broad we can get with our thoughts, the more wide stream. So maybe you don't love your body yet, but maybe we start to see the beauty in everything around us. Like, wow, the trees are so beautiful. We got like 6 inches of snow last night, by the way, here in Minnesota. It is freaking April. I'm done with this, as I speak anyway. But and it was like, I was driving, and on my drive, I always try to find something beautiful about it, or something to be grateful for. So as much as I like don't really want snow right now, however, it was beautiful. Like all of the trees had this like frosted, like white coating on it. It was stunning. So maybe we can start to see the beauty around us, and then we can start to see the beauty within us. So get more broad with your thoughts if you're having trouble seeing it, or abundance. Like I think a lot of people, when it comes to money, they're like, oh, they look at their bank account and they're like, how can I have a good mindset about money? And start to see abundance in other places. Like, wow, there is so much about, like, I have an overabundance of food, or, there's an abundance of love. There's an abundance of beauty. I'm so grateful for XYZ. So make those thoughts, A, you got to start to become aware of them. But B, make those thoughts a bit more broad, and it starts to become easier to see what really is beautiful. If you're speaking about like your body, or start to find something that you really love about your body. Man, I really love the color of my eyes, or I like my broad shoulders because they're strong. Like, so start to see them maybe in a different perspective. Maybe it's hard at first, but get more broad with those. And then you can kind of hone in on the specifics and change those words. But words are powerful.
Words are powerful. And what you focus on grows. Right? Powerful lesson I learned a long time ago. And in every case, it's absolutely true. So if I only focus on the things I don't like about my home, or all the clutter I have to get rid of, and like looking up the mountain, it makes me exhausted, right? Or I'm speaking to maybe how my listeners probably feel sometimes, right? And it's what you're saying. So I think it's important to look back at what you've done. And I like the tip on broadening it out.
Yeah, it served me in so many ways. I'm not perfect either. Like I have those thoughts. I just try not to give them attention and focus on something else.
Yes, I agree. If you could leave one more tip or strategy that's very tangible for my listeners before we finish, what would that be on helping them break free from burnout?
It's a good question. There's so many. One tip.
You can fire hose some strategies too if you want. I know you have a lot.
Let's be minimalist, right? Give me a moment. If I could choose one tip. So this has transformed my life. Can I tell you a story with it?
Please.
So I was 6 weeks postpartum with my third baby. I was nursing her. And that morning, I was speaking virtually for about 250 people at a local community college. Why I agreed to speak at 6 weeks postpartum is a whole nother boundaries question that now I ask myself. But that morning, I have two older sons. Henry, my first, he's like your typical firstborn, like rule follower. Okay. Like I tell them, I'm like, okay, it's time to get ready to go to daycare. Mommy I have to get dressed this morning. 6 weeks postpartum, we haven't been dressed all that much. And typical firstborn, he's like, yep, okay, I'm going to go get my shoes on. Secondborn, a little more like his mom, a little spicier, little less of the rule follower. And he's like, Bo, it's time to get your shoes on and you got to get going. Like dad's going to bring you to daycare. Mommy's got to get dressed. And he's like, Mom, I got to tell you something. And I was like, Bo, we don't have time for this. It's time to get your shoes on. You guys have all been there, right? Like you're trying to get out the door and you're like, come on, but I gotta show you this, Mom. And I'm like, Bo, we got to get going. Like, let's go. We have to leave right now. And daddy's like leaving. He's going to leave without you. Let's go. And, this happened like 3 or 4 times. And, you can feel yourself like escalating and your patience is losing. You're losing it. And I got to the point where he was like insistent. He was like, Mom, I have to show you this. And I lost it. I was like, Bo, get your shoes on. And in that moment, he completely shut down. He dropped to the floor and he's like 3 at the time. He's very young and full out tantrum, crying. And in that moment, I paused and I literally said to myself, I was like, Ashley, what are you doing? And in that moment, I decided I need to ruthlessly eliminate hurry. Hurry was the root of so much of my stress and anxiety, whether it was leaving the house, whether it was rushing to get to work, whether it was trying to have like so much done in one day that there was no margin for anything going astray. And I did a whole course on this. I have a whole course. It's called Unhurried. It's how to ruthlessly eliminate hurry. And that has been transformative to my life. And it has to be ruthless. I use that intentionally. I also heard a sermon at one of our churches. It was called Ruthlessly Eliminate Hurry. And that combined with that experience has just forced me to slow down. And how slowing down actually has making things growing so much faster. Like in my business, we think we have to just like do more. And I think the slowing down factor, the eliminating of hurry ruthlessly has transformed my health, my stress, my cortisol levels, all of the things. And it's making me happier. It's making me more present. It's realizing like, really, if I would have just paused and actually listened to Bo, he would have told me his, 4-second story and we would have had our shoes on. And instead we're in this tantrum. And so it really made me pause. And it was like not of this hurry anymore pause, but of this like realization of I cannot do this anymore.
What a beautiful story. I was instantly reminded, I'm assuming you've read this book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer.
Yes.
I've done a study on that. It is a really beautiful book. And I'd love to hear. So, because I used to have this block, like, well, I can't slow down because just the logistics, like I can say no to volunteering and no to doing these things that would typically make me rush more. But when you're carting your kids to baseball, gymnastics, you're helping with homework, you're putting dinner on the table, like nothing changed for you, my guess is, from like a routine perspective. So how have you break that down, what that looks like for someone who just, again, focusing on what we can control? Like maybe, yes, your kid doesn't do T-ball for one season. Of course, that's going to create more margin. But for those who are in, a season where it's doing all these things, how did that shift for you? Like, what did that look like on a tangible level?
Yeah, great question. So I have this, actually, I can give it to you guys for free. It's this stop, delegate and systemize. And I looked at the things that served me or didn't serve me, and the things that I had to do every single day, regardless if I wanted to do them. And we look at, can I stop this? The biggest thing on that list was scrolling or Facebook. That was a yes. Some of the other things I couldn't, like you said, like I can't stop shuttling. I can't stop doing the dishes. I can't stop doing laundry, etc. But that's where the delegation and the systemization has really kind of freed up that brain power. And so you essentially make a list of these things that you have to do, and how can you systemize? So like the carpooling, the like running and shuttling, how can you maybe pair with a neighbor or another parent that is doing the same thing, and maybe do it every other? And yes, there's a stop to, stop volunteering so much. Like, yes, it's a great thing to do. It's amazing, but like you have to put a boundary on some things. Or what can you delegate? I barter as a chiropractor and a functional med. I barter with a gal, and she cleans my house every week for 4.5 to 5 hours. So I don't have to deep clean. It frees up 4 hours. And people are like, well, I can't afford a cleaner. I'm like, well, what kind of beautiful things do you have that you could barter with and trade with? And so getting creative of how you can essentially do less, but yet still accomplish the same amount. So it's not necessarily just like do more, but how can you use the people around you? How can you systemize, especially if you have older kids, like make them accountable for some of the things that you do in the house. And by no means is no one going to do it as good as you. Let me just phrase that. Like, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not even type A. I would call myself B, like maybe a C. However, we have to get okay with it not being perfect. And that's where some of the delegation comes into play. But have your kids help out. Like, ask your husband. He cannot read your mind. Like us women, we have to learn how to ask. So asking is a super powerful tool to be able to not have to do it all yourself.
I love how you broke that down. Thank you. I think even me just hearing that's always helpful. And again, it's like, it's not creating margin so we can do more, say more, create more tasks to add to our to-do list. It's create margin so we can invest in ourselves again, which I know so many women struggle with for a nuance of reasons. So we can read a book, bring in more of those glimmers, take a few seconds to like focus on the 3 great things that happened instead of the 1 bad thing. Go to that chiropractor appointment you've been delaying for 6 months or 6 years because you don't have time. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So delegate. So get rid of the things that you don't need. What was your number 1? It was, and then 2 was delegate, 3 was systemize, which I'm a big fan of.
Yeah. Stop, delegate.
Yeah. Systemize. I love it. Okay. I'm going to keep that in the back of my head. Well, I can't let you go before asking you this one question. And that is for anyone who's really resonating with the message today and the tips and strategies you shared, where can they go learn more and check out your book?
Yeah. So my book is available on Amazon. It's called Love Your Life and Yourself, A Modern Mom's Guide to Happiness, Health, and Resilience. So it takes this conversation and just dives deep into all of the things, plus so much more that we didn't get a chance to in, a short amount of time to talk about, and then all of the tools to go with it. So it has super actionable items that you can use every single day. So that's on Amazon, Love Your Life and Yourself. And then my website has so much info on it too, with a whole bunch of freebies. It's just my name, Dr.AshleyRath.com. And it talks about like the functional med stuff, coaching. I speak, courses, like all the things. So reach out to me, follow me on social. I talk a lot about hormones and balancing hormones on my Instagram. Again, everything is just Dr. Ashley Rath. So if you type that in on Instagram, you should be able to find me. My website is the same as well.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to link all that in the show notes. And speaking to things that are trending on social, or maybe it's just my age, I'm seeing tons of hormone talk. And I think it's always helpful to have, because I was also scoping out your Instagram before our chat, and I was like, ooh, so you have really some really great content out there. It makes really a lot of sense and aligns with my season of life.
Love it. Love it.
So one last question I end every episode with is, what is one thing in your home that you would never let go of or declutter, and why?
The first thing that popped into my head was books and the Bible. I have so many books and it makes my heart happy. So the one thing I can do that we are in the process of doing is just making a new office with like full wall library style bookshelves. So that's on my to-do list. But books, I can't get rid of them and they've transformed my life. Yeah. So we have so many of them, but it makes my heart happy.
I love that. Your face lit up when you said that too. So I always love to see like the first question, what would you declutter? Oh, dishes for sure. And then, the juxtaposition of the last question. I love that. And I think that is so common in someone who identifies as a reader, right? I'm a reader. I like accumulating knowledge and growth mindset and all these things. So it makes sense that that's one of your favorite things to keep and enjoy, pursue. It's a really beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me, Katie. I really loved this conversation.
Same. Thanks, Dr. Ashley. And everyone, give her a follow. I'll put all those links in the show notes. And thanks so much.
Awesome. Have a great day.